really get speakers last. Okay. Welcome. Welcome. Today's the day, folks. Today's the day we're going to launch our Polluters Pay campaign, and we are so thrilled to have you all here as part of this movement with us. My name is Cowboy Eames. I work for Better Future Project with 350 Mass and communities responding against extreme weather. I am so thrilled to be here. I am honored to be able to introduce the people to you here today that I have. If you all want to just start to come in, we've got some great speakers for you today, but most importantly, we have our lead sponsors here with us. We've taken a step that we all know, we've all been thinking in our minds that those that cause the problem should be the one who pays for the damages. It's been said for years. It's finally happening. It's happening in Massachusetts, thanks to Representative Steve Owens. And
Great. So thank you all for coming out to the Commander's Mansion at the Watertown Arsenal today for a discussion of our bill, which is H872 and S481, an act establishing a climate change superfund and promoting polluter responsibility, or the Polluters Pay Act. I want to thank, in particular today, I see a number of our city councilors are here in the audience. We have Councilor at Large Caroline Bays and Tony Palumba, District D Councilor Lisa Feltman, City Councilor Vinnie Picciarelli. Anybody else that I missed? Wave if I didn't see you. All right, great. Well, the principle of polluters pay is very simple, right? Those who make the mess should be the ones to clean it up. And the bill that we propose is simple as well. It would impose a fee on the largest emitters of greenhouse gases in Massachusetts that would go to a climate resiliency superfund. These would be polluters like Shell Oil, whose profits doubled in 2022 to $42 billion. Just to put that in perspective, if you bought, let's say, a new mid-size sedan for about $25,000 every single day since the building of the Egyptian pyramids, that'd be about $40 billion. So that's the scale of profits that we're talking about. And ExxonMobil recorded a record $56 billion in profits last year. ExxonMobil, by the way, forecasted how climate change would cause global temperature rise as long ago as the 1970s. Their private research predicted how burning fossil fuels would warm the planet even as the company publicly denied that claim. So these companies have gotten away with polluting our air with greenhouse gases knowing the consequences. This bill requires that big polluters pay a fee based on their share of historic emissions that would go to the DEP for the purposes of climate change adaptation superfund. The superfund model dealing with pollution, it works. We're here at the Watertown Arsenal because this is an example of a superfund success story. We'll hear from former town councilor Susan Falkoff. The EPA added the Arsenal to the national priorities list, designating it as a superfund in 1994. And cleanup activities removed contamination and demolished a nuclear reactor which was over in there, not very far from where we are right now. But right now, the former Arsenal is once again an engine of growth for Watertown, with the Arsenal Yards development down the street, the Arsenal on the Charles here, all leading the way. And a climate resiliency superfund, it can do the same for the areas most impacted by the devastating effects of climate change. We know that storms are going to be more serious as sea levels rise. Shoreline erosion and storm surges will impact our coast. Rising temperatures, shifting rainfall patterns are likely to increase the intensity of both floods and droughts. So we estimate that polluters pay will raise about $10 billion over the next 10 years, which would all go to climate adaptation projects. That would include infrastructure projects like seawalls and stormwater improvements, making defensive upgrades to our roads, our bridges, our subways, our transit, improving grid infrastructure so it can handle the transition from fossil fuels. Environmental projects like wetlands and forest restoration, or invasive species management as patterns move and species move elsewhere. But also cleanup projects after storms, Estimates show that a hurricane in Massachusetts could deal up to $76 billion in damages, not to mention the potential loss of life. So this is our chance to prepare the Commonwealth for the inevitable. This bill is designed to hold those responsible for extreme weather events accountable, further allowing cities and towns to prepare and, most importantly, protect their residents. And with that, I'd like to pass it to my Senate partner. I have the privilege of not only working on this bill with Senator Eldridge, but several other great climate bills. And we are also co-chairs of the legislature's Clean Energy Caucus, myself in the House and Senator Eldridge in the Senate. Senators.
Thank you so much, President Owens. It's so wonderful to be here in Watertown, and I want to thank 350 Mass and the Better Future Project and the great leadership of Cavill Ames for bringing us here today. It's great to see a lot of our Metro West 350 Mass members here. So thank you so much for being here. It's great to be here with senior staff for Senator Warren, Senator Markey, and Congresswoman Clark, who I know are all very supportive not only of this bill, but I know a similar effort at the federal level in terms of national legislation to make polluters pay. And as Representative Owen noted, the bill, an act establishing a climate change superfund and promoting polluter responsibility will make polluters pay. And while I think it's a coincidence that Representative Owens and I, as the lead sponsor of this bill, also have superfund sites in our district, but I do just want to relate that in the district I represent in Acton, the company W.R. Grace, which is very well known from the book and movie A Civil Action that contaminated another community, Woburn, did a similar action in Acton, contaminating hundreds of acres of lands that W.R. Grace ran a number of plant facilities. That was in the 1970s, and if not for the federal Superfund law, that would not be cleaned up. And so what has happened over the past 30 years is that site has been cleaned up because of the federal Superfund law, which this bill is modeled after. And now that land is a place where solar panels are being built, where there's discussions about finally bringing back housing on that site. So this is the power of making sure that those that pollute our land, pollute our earth, making sure they pay, and making sure that how we use that money, in this case for another existential crisis with global warming. Thank you. So I just want to say, as of today, the burning of fossil fuels has raised global temperatures by over 1 degree Celsius, according to the United Nations. Barring drastic changes to fossil fuel consumption, the end of this decade will also put an end to our limited opportunity to keep global warming below the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold that scientists tell us will dramatically increase the dangers of natural disaster and ecosystem collapse. Even if we were to completely eliminate fossil fuel usage this minute, we're all locked into a certain amount of climate change. We're seeing that with the impacts, the flooding, the heat waves, the impact on our agriculture and our farms. For decades, fossil fuel companies have lied and manipulated facts to hide the causal link between fossil fuel emissions and global warming. And although their own internal research revealed this relationship decades ago, as Representative Owens noted, they spent billions of dollars to make consumers and investors doubt the verity of this science and to maintain an illusion of sustainability. If nothing changes, we will be the ones to pay for this, and of course, we already are. Climate change adaptations will be required to protect our communities in light of a changing world. This will include massive investment in building seawalls and conducting coastal protections to hold off rising oceans, performing ecological restoration projects to save damaged habitats and essential natural environments, upgrading stormwater management systems and sewage treatment plants to mitigate the damages of extreme weather events and increased flooding, making defensive upgrades to roads, bridges, subways, and transit systems, and increasing the resilience of the electric grid and the weatherization of energy efficiency of buildings. We will also need to be ready to recover from the damages of climate-related extreme weather events, which are becoming increasingly frequent. I have full confidence that we have the knowledge and the drive to make this happen, especially here in Massachusetts. However, it will be expensive. One quick example is that a hurricane in Massachusetts would cause an estimated $76 billion in damages. But we remember the hurricane from a few years ago that just barely missed Massachusetts and devastated New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, and the impact that still has in those states. The solution is glaringly simple. Let those responsible for the mess be the ones to clean it up. In establishing a climate change superfund and promoting polluter responsibility will require the largest oil and gas companies who profited off the greenhouse gas emissions we are now struggling with to repay our communities through a climate superfund, which will be used to finance climate adaptation projects. This is especially essential for environmental justice communities who have been harmed by big fossil fuel companies to a much greater extent, and we're still having those protests at the State House, at the East Boston substation, at the Weymouth gas compressor station, so we're seeing these impacts directly. They have historically faced more pollution and environmental degradation than other communities across the board. This bill emphasizes correcting this inequity and requires 40% of the funding to directly benefit environmental justice communities. Much like how big tobacco companies lied for decades about the high health risk of their products, sacrificing lives to cancer, emphysema, and addiction for the sake of their own profit, large fossil fuel companies who even use the same marketers as big tobacco have become rich at the expense of our planet and our well-being. And again, we know that the ExxonMobil and other fossil fuel companies have known this for decades, the negative impacts on our climate. So I want to conclude and say, is just as big tobacco companies were forced to settle for billions of dollars with state governments for the harm they caused the citizens' health, it is time for large fossil fuel companies to make reparations and give us the resources we need to adapt to our changing climate. I am deeply proud to stand with you all today to truly do something about climate change. One of the comments we have, one of the discussions we have at the State House, especially with the Clean Energy Caucus, is that there are so many great bills, there's so many great initiatives going on at the State House, but without dedicated revenue sources, it's very difficult to actually make real change to directly impact communities. So I'm deeply proud to stand with you all today to do something truly positive about climate change. It's a pleasure to work with 350 Mass, Our Climate, and especially young people who I know will be speaking later today, committed to this cause. It is, of course, those who are youngest and those not yet born will bear the greatest brunt of climate change. So to conclude, I'm reminded of a Dr. Martin Luther King quote. He said, quote, "A lie cannot live. Until we hold the people responsible for our climate crisis accountable for the outcomes of their deceit, their lives continue to live and shape our collective future. When we are chosen to facilitate, we end the lies and enable our communities to build a strong future capable of sustaining our difficult and changing reality." It's an honor to stand here with you today, and I look forward to passing this legislation this session. Thank you.
And we are honored to have you as our lead sponsors as well. Next, I want to introduce Susan Falkoff. She was a Watertown City Councilor for 14 years. And she's going to lead us because she remembers the Superfund site and the fight that went on. So, Susan.
Thank you so much to Steve and Jamie for all your work on this and your leadership in the legislature. So we are all standing today on land that was formerly sacred to the Quasit Indian tribe and subsequently so polluted by the U.S. Department of Defense that it became a Superfund site. But not without a fight. In 1989, the Conservation Law Foundation initiated a friendly lawsuit, our favorite oxymoron, against the EPA because Defense Department sites in New England were overdue to be scored for possible Superfund listing. Our activist group, Watertown Citizens for Environmental Safety, and many of you will remember them we became a party to the lawsuit because we had standing. And in 1984, we made the list. 1994, it's a typo. Superfund status came with resources that allowed us to transform this former military site that was surrounded by barbed wire into a thriving public space. We were on the national priority list, and we became a priority. We had the advantage of federal oversight, meaning that where federal standards were higher than state standards, we were now mandated to the higher standard. The Mass Department of Environmental Protection was at the table, but then, as now, they were vastly under-resourced. Superfund status made it a priority for DEP as well. EPA provided resources for public participation. Our activist group obtained a technical assistance grant to help us make sense of the many, many, many documents that were produced while evaluating the pollution and selecting a remedy. We had a seat at the table. The how and when and how much a cleanup will be is not ordained, it is negotiated. I am especially proud that we fought for and won the right to see documents in draft form before they were too final for us to have meaningful input. The Army came to trust that if we were given a seat at the table, we would act responsibly. The Watertown Arsenal Superfund site was delisted in 2006. The polluter paid for cleanup of the contamination it had left behind. This property is not pristine, but it's been determined to be clean enough to protect human health and safety. EPA was formed to address specific toxic sites like this one, but we now have a much bigger problem. The Earth's atmosphere itself threatens to become toxic to human health and safety. Government resources shouldn't have the entire burden of funding our response to climate change. We are paying while the polluters are getting rich. We know who they are, and it's time for them to pay their fair share.
Yes, thank you so much, Susan. Next, I want to introduce the Avengers team, as I like to call them. The regional directors team. We are truly, truly honored to have with us today Liam Horseman, come on, and Allison Huntoon, and Wade Blackman. Liam is from Senator Murphy's office, Allison is from Senator Warren's office, and Wade is from Representative Clark's office. We have the federal support to pass this bill. So I'm going to have Liam come up and give some remarks. Followed by Allison.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here with you today. I want to again thank Senator Eldridge and Representative Owens for introducing this bill, as well as for Cabell and the whole 350 Mass team for their friendship and their work on climate action across Massachusetts, as well as the other coalition members here, without whom none of this work would be possible. Mass Power Forward, Our Climate, and Massachusetts Youth Coalition. So here's a statement from Senator Murphy. For too long, the companies that pollute our planet have turned massive profits, while the American people have been left to face the health, climate, and economic consequences. Big oil and the fossil fuel industry have played an active role in causing the worsening climate crisis, but our communities, and not these companies, are currently paying the price. That's why I am fighting on the federal level for legislation to take much needed and long overdue action to have fossil fuel companies pay their fair share in order to fund the federal response to the climate crisis they helped cause. I look forward to continuing to work to advance climate priorities and environmental justice with advocates all across the Commonwealth. Thank you all for being here today, and thank you for your efforts.
Hi everyone, I'm Allison Huntoon from Senator Elizabeth Warren's office. Thank you all for being here. I'm glad to share a statement from Senator Warren. Good morning. I wish that I could be in Watertown with all of you today to celebrate the efforts of the legislators and advocates who are pushing us closer to a cleaner and greener Massachusetts. It's time to talk about holding companies accountable for their role in the climate crisis. Corporate polluters should pay for the consequences of their actions, not leave them for communities to clean up. At the federal level, we've seen the critical impact of the EPA's Superfund at work. And as we continue to address the needs of our communities across Massachusetts, I'm glad to have such strong partners at all levels of government. Thank you to Senator Eldridge and Representative Owens for their leadership in the fight for climate justice, and to everyone fighting for a sustainable and equitable Massachusetts.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Wade Blackman. It's my honor to be here on behalf of Congresswoman and Democratic Whip Catherine Clark, along with my colleagues in the federal delegation. It's really exciting to be here on talking about greening our communities on the greenest of all days. But I want to thank Senator Eldridge, Representative Owens, two outstanding champions on Beacon Hill who are working every day to ensure that the Commonwealth treats the climate crisis with the urgency it deserves. And I'm especially grateful to be back here in Watertown, a community that has been a leader for the Commonwealth on how municipalities can address climate change right now, here at home. And Congresswoman Clark has recently taken on a new leadership role in the Democratic caucus, and she's committed to using that platform to fight for the future of our Commonwealth and our planet. We know how much is at stake. Climate change is the existential threat of our time, and it's going to require an all-out response at every level of government. We look forward to partnering with you in this effort to reduce pollution, invest in renewable energy and sustainable technologies, and finally addressing long-standing issues of environmental justice in our communities. Thank you for your leadership, your partnership, and thank you for inviting us to be part of this event today. Thank you.
We're really thrilled to have them here. So next, I'm going to introduce some young people from Massachusetts Youth Climate Coalition who are fellows for our climate. Woo! Yes. And one took off school today, so yes. In here, and I have Lana Tuckle as well. They're going to give their remarks about why they're supporting this legislation, but also it's going to be hard. I've read what they're going to say, and it got me choked up. So, come on up, Tina and Lana.
Hello everyone. Today I'm here in this beautiful city of Watertown with all of you, but I was actually born and raised in Boston, specifically in Dorchester. For me, growing up in an environmental justice community meant growing up in vulnerability. Vulnerable to the health hazards and from my general surroundings, but also from inside my very home. Vulnerable to the racial and geographic discrimination that can be omnipresent in environmental policy making. Vulnerable to the lack of attentiveness for environmental issues from some of the adults who hold decision-making powers. And so I despaired, knowing that the impacts of the climate crisis will hit communities like mine first and worse, as fossil fuel companies continue to accelerate their profits to grotesque degrees. And I'm sorry, this mic is not going to work for me. Can you all hear me well from here?
Yes.
Can you hear for me? They don't get there by clean means. Trust me. These companies don't just exploit the land, they exploit the people. And they try to silence and stop on Black and Indigenous voices and lives. And they're the reason as to why the respiratory issues in America is at an all-time high. And I know I am young, but I'm not blind to the world around me. Because I and so many others in my generation have grown up in an era where there's article after article and tweet after tweet and disaster after disaster, showing how our planet is falling apart and how it's falling apart because of us. Okay, sorry guys. Okay, allow me to actually correct myself on that because I say us, but I think it's about time we point our fingers to who is really steering the wheel. growing at alarming rates. You knew that the quality of life of the inhabitants of this planet was plummeting. But for decades, you continue to spread disinformation and fund climate deception and are still doing it to this day, and I'm angry about it. I'm angry as a member of an environmental justice community. I'm angry as a member of the younger generation who has to deal with and pick up the mess these politicians and companies have left behind, and I continue to pile on. I want to see change, and I need to see that the change these climate movements are making are equitable. We need to see that these voices are being heard. That is why I'm here today instead of being in school. That is why.
That's right. That's right.
That is why I'm choosing to support the campaign to make polluters pay.
Woo! Woo!
Because this bill aims to hold those vicious oil and gas companies accountable. Because this bill will focus on funding those climate adaptation and mitigation projects that we so desperately need. Because this bill will direct 40% of the funding to benefit environmental justice communities. Because in this bill, I see that my story and the story of so many others who are not represented here today, I see that those stories are recognized and prioritized. And I feel so reassured when I see the rigorous work that has been put into the making of this bill and the launching and continuing growth of this campaign. I'm angry, but I'm more than ready to see some change. And I look forward to fighting for this with all of you. Thank you. I think that deserves another round of applause. Hi, my name is Lana. I just want to thank 350 Mass and Mass Power Forward for organizing this launch and for welcoming and supporting me to speak on this bill today. Uplifting youth voices is so important, and I'm happy to see organizations recognizing that intersectionality and acting on its importance. I also want to thank Representative Owens and Senator Eldridge for championing such an important bill. Today, I want to talk about why we need to pass the Polluters Pay Bill, an act establishing a climate change superfund and promoting polluters' responsibility. A little bit about me. I'm currently a student at Brandeis University, a fellow for our climate, a member of the Massachusetts Youth Climate Coalition, a lifelong resident of Watertown, a graduate of Watertown High School, relatively new voter. I'm also a daughter and a sister, and perhaps most pivotal to where I am right now, I am a young person trying to navigate my future under the weight of the climate crisis. For some of us in Massachusetts, climate change doesn't always feel close to us. It can feel like a far-off disaster that doesn't need to be a priority when other glaring issues are staring us in the face. But this is an illusion. We know that we are in for serious levels of flooding, extreme heat, drought, and severe weather, the likes of which we have never seen before. Now we are on the other side of the pandemic, one that has shown us just how unprepared we are for disaster. With the efforts that the climate crisis requires of us, we need to be prepared to pay every penny to mitigate and adapt to these foreseeable climate disasters. And as the pandemic has also showed us, we must be flexible and ready for the unforeseeable as well. Often, people associate climate organizing with advocating for individual change, which, while this is an important part of norm shifts around sustainability, it is not our biggest concern in terms of climate change. I can change my diet and my lifestyle, but no change I make will ever come close to the changes private corporations could make to slow climate disaster. This bill takes a big step. This bill takes a big step towards holding corporations accountable for climate change. By generating $75 billion over 25 years from the profits of the biggest greenhouse gas emitters, the Polluters Pay Bill would help Massachusetts prepare for the impacts of climate change. It would allow us to adapt to the crisis we're in and do it on the dollar of those who have caused it. It is designed specifically to avoid passing costs on to consumers, targets the corporations who have contributed the most, and sorry, I lost to be used towards climate adaptation, with 40% of the funding directly benefiting environmental justice communities.
Look ahead to what this could mean. If we finally hold these corporations accountable on a state level, we are that much closer to nationwide accountability and global accountability. These are the steps that we have to take to get there. Government needs to set down a boundary and send a message that these corporations cannot proceed as they have been. Change will not happen unless our government stops fossil fuel corporations from pushing us towards climate disaster. Since I started organizing, I've mostly seen small victories. But today, I'm ready for a big one. I'm ready to see my government care about the potential of worldwide devastation far beyond what we've seen in the pandemic. Policy can be complicated, but the necessity to do something about this crisis is not. It's not enough to recognize the threat of climate change. We need tangible policy that will get us to a better place. If we succeed and pass this bill, it will be a turning point, a moment where we choose to hold people accountable in a way that is equitable, fair, and transformative. The Polluters Pay Bill would be a massive step in the right direction. I am a young person, and I'm here today because I have the opportunity to have my voice heard. Even though I'm now at the ripe age of 20 years old, on the brink of being taken seriously for what I have to say, I still sometimes feel like a child with no power, confused why our futures wouldn't be prioritized over corporations. I'm here today to do what is in my power to support this bill. What will I tell my children and grandchildren about the choices we made for their futures? I hope that standing up here will be a pivotal moment that I remember, when I advocated for something that I cared about and it actually happened. When the activist in me feels like the years of effort have been for something significant. When as a voter, I feel proud to be a Massachusetts resident. Passing this bill is a huge step in the right direction, a step to showing the younger generations that the future holds a world that wants us not just to live, but to flourish in the process. Each and every one of you has the power to support the life of this bill. This is my plea to you, as a young person, navigating my future under the weight of the climate crisis. Help us pass this bill and make polluters pay.
You're really great. So this concludes our press conference here today, but it does not conclude the campaign. The campaign has just started. Thank you all for being here. I want to thank our speakers. And I want to encourage people to join this campaign. We cannot do this without you. This is not a drill. We are running out of time. Therefore, it is time to make polluters pay. There are sign-ups. We're going to be socializing. We're going to be hanging out. We're going to be eating food together and talking about how we get this passed, because we will. Thank you all so much.
Wow.